Oh, Jack, did you put your foot in it this time? Jack, Together for Peace as you might know him, has posted a video in which he decided to compare the mockery that some people, like some atheists, like to level at religious people to racism. And by doing that, Jack has maneuvered himself into a very unenviable position that he cannot get himself out of without losing face one way or the other. Allow me to explain. You see, there's a little bit of history there that you need to be aware of and that a lot of people are not aware of, in which I had an argument with Mr. Together for Peace about his attitude to people who do not share his beliefs. I put a lot of pressure on Jack, I have to admit that. And maybe Jack felt that that was rather unfair. But ultimately, in the very end, I got Jack to admit, unambiguously, that he felt it was right and just for people who do not share his beliefs to suffer eternally for not believing the way he does. And you need to get your head around the way I phrased that, because I phrased that very deliberately in that way, because by phrasing it in that way, it focused on what Jack himself felt people were deserving of. It was completely irrelevant within that context whether this eternal suffering that Jack felt we are deserving of actually exists or not, is actually real or not. That is completely irrelevant. What is important is that Jack feels that we would deserve to suffer eternally for not believing in his God. That is the background, the backdrop to what I'm going to say next. That is what you need to keep in mind, because it is very important. Because either Jack is being excruciatingly hypocritical here. If he feels that he can and awe about a little bit of mockery, when conversely he feels that people that he disagrees with deserve to suffer eternally. If a bit of mockery makes you akin to a racist, then what does that make you, Jack? The other thing that Jack might argue, the other way he cannot get himself out of this situation, is that if he is going to compare a bit of mockery of a person's belief system to something such as racism, then we need to look at what something such as racism actually focuses on. Racism focuses on a person's attributes that the person is born with. The color of one's skin, for example. There are other types of bigotry that focus on things that you have very little or no control over, like the place where you were born, your cultural identity, your ethnicity, your sexuality, your gender, and so on and so forth. All those types of bigotry are on a similar level to racism. So if Jack then tries to compare mockery of religion to racism, he is basically insinuating in what he's saying that religion is one of these aspects of a person's personality that that person can do very little about. Now again, this is something that you need to focus on, because this is very important. Religion, a person's set of beliefs, and a lot of people who actually subscribe to this idea that beliefs, you cannot choose your beliefs. You come to believe because you are compelled by the force of an argument. You have been convinced by the force of a line of reasoning or arguments or whatever to come to believe something. And it is actually not an act of free will to either believe or disbelieve something. that is the sort of context that Jack, consciously or subconsciously, is painting here when he tries to compare mockery of a belief system to racism. And again, if you look at it that way, if you look at a belief system, a set of beliefs, things that you do or do not think are true and so on, if you see that as something that you have very little personal control over, and that therefore mocking a set of beliefs is akin to racism, then Jack might again want to reflect on his own attitude to atheists. Because how can you feel then, in that circumstance, given that attitude to mockery of your own belief system, how then can you justify feeling that somebody who is equally compelled not to believe in the things that you believe in is again deserving of an eternal punishment? Again, Jack, you've dug yourself into a hole that you will not be able to dig yourself out of. The only way you can dig yourself out of this hole, Jack, this hole that you've just put yourself into, is to reach out your hand and let us, atheists, the people that you so despise, help you out.